Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-A Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
This is the Black and Gold Banneret podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez.
And this is Eric Lopez here. Jeff is off this week. Coming up on the show, we'll get you set for UCF and Navy. The Mikey Keene era started it up. Plus, later on the show, we'll be joined by UCF Cross Country assistant coach Bryan Jackson, as UCF will begin their first home meet for cross country this year, ranked 13th in the region. Bryson Turner will join me to talk about that, as well as women's soccer, a critical week for them, and women's volleyball as well, and much more. Of course, you can follow us at UCF_Banneret on Twitter, and of course, blackandgoldbanneret.com for all the latest in UCF. Joining me here is Andrew Gluchov, as usual. Drew, it's football week. Back to playing games.
Undefeated against Bye, but Bye never loses. This is a critical weekend.
All right, let's get into that. Navy is UCF up at Navy. Navy winless this season. They have struggled immensely. But obviously a lot of intrigue in this game just because of the situation at quarterback. Obviously, those that already know, Dillon Gabriel out indefinitely. This will be Mikey Keene's first start. What is the big narrative here that you're looking forward to seeing once the ball is kicked off on Saturday?
Well, for my first question is, will Isaiah Bowser be on the field? Still up in the air. They've kind of hinted it's a week-to-week thing, so it's hard to say whether he'll be on the field or not. That's going to really change the view of this offense in the eyes of the defense. We saw the Louisville Cardinals did not respect the run once Isaiah Bowser left the field, and it took until later when the offense was able to kind of take advantage of that. So if he's on the field, obviously you're going to see a much more run-heavy offense because he's going to be able to carry a lot of the load. If he's off the field, UCF's still going to have a lot of running, but they're going to have to put a little more weight on Mikey Keene as far as being able to move that ball downfield.
You've seen Mikey Keene up close. What kind of game plan do you think UCF will have for Mikey Keene? Do you think it'll be normal, like if Dillon was the quarterback? Do you think they'll scale back? What kind of game plan do you expect to see from UCF's offense with Mikey Keene under center?
Well, it's going to be scaled back. That goes without saying. It's not going to be quite as complex of an offense, but it's still going to have the intricacies that Gus Malzahn likes to have in his offense's movement, little misdirection. But I don't think it's going to be nearly as complicated. Mikey Keene, true freshman, still learning the game. I mean, I watched him during the spring game. We watched him in limited action against Bethune-Cookman. And there's potential there. There's a lot of potential there, but it's going to take time to cultivate that.
It's definitely going to take time. They're going to face a Navy team that has struggled. It's just kind of been surprising to see this downfall of Navy football, really the last now 2 seasons under Coach Niamatolo. What have you seen from Navy that's been issues for them this season that they've struggled? They're coming off a decent performance against Houston where they led early in the game. They got off to a good start, but they lost to Houston. Their offense is averaging, I believe, only 10 points per game. This is not the Navy football that we're used to seeing here.
Oh, not at all. Navy is reliant on, being a triple option, it's reliant on having a really good running quarterback. And they've struggled with that. They can't seem to find the guy. They've used Xavier Arline. They've used Messiah Maynor. And no one's really kind of settled in as far as being the guy. And as a result, the offense has been stagnant. I mean, their rushing is under 200 yards a game, which for a team that basically does nothing but rushing is absolutely atrocious. UCF's strength is in their rushing defense, giving up under 79 yards a game. This could be a very long day for the Navy offense, as long as UCF remembers they can still throw the ball. And I remember a couple years ago, UCF playing Navy gave up a couple of really long passing touchdowns because they completely sold on run and forgot to respect the possible pass.
Xavier Arline, you mentioned, led them with 64 yards and a touchdown in the Houston game. They led 17-7 at the half in Houston. Houston outscored them 21-3 in the second half to win 28-20. So perhaps they're starting to find some answers at Navy. They're usually a tough place to play. We always remember the 2017 game, the Bam Moore hit, and everything like that. I think tackling for UCF, I know you've been sort of critical of the defense and tackling at times. That's going to be put to the test here because Navy hasn't been able to, usually when they're successful offensively with that system is they gash you for 7, 8, 10 yards a carry because either that first guy in assignment either misses a tackle or he's out of position. I think positioning and tackling will be the key for UCF defense this game, don't you think?
Absolutely. It's, as I've always said, it's never a good sign when a defensive back is your leading tackler. And Quadric Bullard has been the leading tackler for all 3 games. Currently has 25 tackles on the year. Bryson Armstrong is second at 18, and then it goes down from there. But you always have to be a little concerned when a defensive back is your main guy. That being said, number 2 through number 6 are all linebackers or defensive linemen. So they're going to be very busy in that front 7, making things happen. I was a little disappointed to be an understatement. I was disappointed in a lot of the missed tackles against Louisville. You have Malik Cunningham, a really shifty guy as a runner, and was able to allow defensive players to over pursue and then take themselves out of position and thus miss the tackle. I think over the last week into this week, going into this weekend, I used to probably spend a lot of time working on these fundamentals, and there's no guy that's that shifty for Navy. So it's going to be a little more conventional, and you're able to square up a little bit better, get your helmet into the numbers and be able to wrap on the tackle. But I mean, the big thing is you got to get those arms around and you got to hold on.
Navy's only averaging 3.5 yards a carry.
That's terrible.
It's unbelievable. I personally think here, Drew, that this could be it for Ken Niumatalolo. There's been a lot of drama there. They fired their offensive coordinator. Well, it was the athletic director that fired the offensive coordinator. Ken went to the AD, convinced him to bring him back in a different position on the staff. It's so bizarre, so un-Navy-like. I just wonder if we're seeing the end here of Navy football with in the Ken Niumatalolo era here. To me, it just seems like a divorce is headed this way from both sides here. When you have a situation like they've had where the offensive coordinator is fired by the AD and the coach disagrees with that, and that's not a good look.
No, not a good look at all. And the unfortunate problem with any of the service academies is they don't recruit like other schools. You kind of have to work with what you got. And that's why there's so many running-based offenses, over the years, is because it's easier to find an athlete who can run the ball than a gunslinger. And right now, the cupboard's just a little bit, empty compared to it's been in prior years. I mean, last year wasn't great either, but you don't have a Malcolm Perry or a Keenan Reynolds or a star. There's no guy who stands out and carries this team. And with this team running the triple option, there's no focal point. And as a result, you don't get good numbers. And I don't blame this on the coaching staff. That you got to work with what you got, and I would hate for this to become leading up to a divorce. I think it's a natural fit. I mean, you think of one, you think of the other. It was like Calhoun at Air Force. You think of one, you think of the other, and it's just a natural fit. I'd hate to see that go away.
We'll see how that all plays itself out and see if what they could turn it around. Their running game, you mentioned Bowser. Obviously, that's one of your questions. Does he play? Does he not play? Let's say if Bowser is not available, what do you expect to see then from the backfield? Do you see a platoon? Do you see a guy taking the reins? What do you see from the backfield if, and again, as we record this on Wednesday, we do not know Bowser's status. We're not going to know the coaching staff. Gus talks on Monday, and that's it. Now, he does do a coaches show on Thursday, so maybe we'll get updates. I'm not going to hold my breath on that. So what do you expect from the backfield there?
Well, it's definitely going to be committee. Definitely. Trillian Coles has been the great story of the year, coming back from that Achilles injury that kept him out last year. Has done absolutely phenomenal. Hasn't had any breakout runs like Johnny Richardson has had, but I mean, he's been consistently just chugging away. Very undersized guy, but hits a lot harder than his size looks. And I'll tell you, the funniest moment, after the Bethune-Cookman game, he's the unnamed guy who walks up to be interviewed, and no one knows who he is. I mean, it was actually a little depressing in the fact that we didn't realize that he was coming up there, so we didn't recognize him. Eventually, we figured it out, but I mean, it was just an awkward moment. But being out of the limelight, not being able to play at all last year, not being majorly in the rotation in 2019, as a result, we never really got to know him, but I think this is a great story of coming back from a brutal injury. I mean, I would take an ACL tear over a ruptured Achilles any day of the week. And Coles has come back. He's second in the team with average yards per carry of people over 15 carries. Johnny Richardson being the highest, but he's also had a number of breakout runs where he outruns his own legs and falls over. I think Coles, Richardson, and Mark Anthony Richards are probably going to be your main three. And I wouldn't be too surprised if Joey Gatewood gets on the field a little bit more as the running quarterback, and you see kind of not two quarterbacks set, not like a dual, double-headed monster thing, but I think he's going to come in and spell every so often and run a little bit. I'd love to see him throw the ball and catch defenses completely off guard, but I could see Gatewood in there as well.
I agree. I'm glad you brought up Gatewood. I do think we'll see him have a role in this offense. And that, think about that. He was given a waiver and become eligible, which is kind of now looms pretty important, I think, from a UCF standpoint on that. 3:30 is the kickoff. The game is on CBS Sports Network, our old friends. Remember CBS Sports Network there, folks? We used to be on there often.
Yeah, longest commercial breaks ever.
Well, hasn't changed. Randy Cross will be part of that broadcast. Super Bowl champion. They do the Navy games over there. They carry every Navy game. Depending on where you look at, the spread's anywhere around 15 points. UCF's favored. Any opinion on that?
I think it's a fair spread. I mean, Navy's really shown nothing to justify otherwise, as well as the fact that UCF's rushing defense is really good. Even though Malik Cunningham had a great game, they still average less than 75 yards given up a game. And, that defensive line is tough. Big Cat Bryant, Kalia Davis. I mean, they are really disruptive and cause a lot of problems.
It should be interesting, and I think staying healthy is going to be a key when you're facing that Navy offense from a physical standpoint. It takes its toll, so you're hoping that you could play well, get off to a good start, take a big lead, get some of your guys out of there, and get ready for the following week when you take on East Carolina, which, by the way, was announced as a 6 o'clock ESPN Plus game next Saturday, home game against East Carolina. A few other tidbits I want to get your thoughts, Drew, before we let you go. Cincinnati's at Notre Dame. That's a big game. This is a big game this week for Cincinnati. And And it does, I think, impact UCF from this regard. If Cincinnati were to upset Notre Dame at Notre Dame, they would be undefeated, probably ranked, what do you think, top 5, top 6 in the polls after that win. And it's important because this Monday we'll probably find out where that UCF Cincinnati kickoff time is, time slot. I think if Cincinnati were to upset UCF, or to upset Notre Dame, I should say, then Cincinnati UCF may get a very attractive time slot on that Saturday the 16th. Could be in the mix for a primetime game, could be in the mix for possibly game day, because game day I don't believe has ever been to Cincinnati. All of that could be in play if Cincinnati beats Notre Dame. Do you think they will beat Notre Dame?
Well, I have to correct you on a couple of things. One, Cincinnati's the favorite team here. They're also the higher ranked team, so that wouldn't be.
Whoa! Wait a minute. Are they really at Notre Dame?
At Notre Dame, they're a 2.5-point favorite against Notre Dame, which, as I always tell people, add 3 points to that as a home team thing. So really, they're expecting Cincinnati by 5.5 points, but they're giving a field goal to Notre Dame as a home field thing. But no, Cincinnati is also ranked 7th against number 9 Notre Dame. Notre Dame has played down to competition during the year. They've also played up. Curb stop in Wisconsin, but there's a little asterisk there. They only scored 20 points on offense. The rest of that was scored elsewhere. So the offense, still a little bit of work. And this Cincinnati team may be one of the top defenses in the country. I mean, they are absolutely dominant on defense. They have multiple players who are probably going to be drafted within the first 2 days on defense, if not multiple guys on day 1. They're talking about potentially a couple first rounders. This is a really good squad. I mean, I think number 7 is unjustified. I think they should be a little bit higher for that defense and the way the offense is coming together. They struggled again early season, but as we've seen this year, this has been a weird college football year. Logic has not quite worked out. Teams are losing games that they shouldn't be. Teams are struggling games they shouldn't be. It's not 2007 weird, but it's trying. And, hold my beer. I think Cincinnati has a legit shot to win this game, and I agree with you. If they win and UCF holds serve and takes care of business, ESPN is going to have to take a very long look at this game as potentially a marquee network primetime game.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree with that, and I think that's why I've seen some people like, no, we got to root against Cincinnati. Why?
I disagree with that.
Yeah, why? How does that benefit UCF by having Cincinnati lose? It doesn't.
It doesn't. Yeah, that's now you want to talk petty. That's petty right there. The truth is, you want your conference mates to win every non-conference game as possible, and you want Cincinnati to be as highly ranked as possible. 1, you want that possibility of that marquee matchup that's going to get eyeballs. 2, you want the chance to topple the Giants. The higher ranked they are, the better it is for UCF if they can come away with the upset. Now, granted, UCF's got a handicap on them, new quarterback, new, a lot of injuries, still healing. Who knows what's going to be going on, within a couple weeks, but you want to have that opponent to be as highly ranked as possible because you want to build the credibility of your own program in the eyes of the outside world.
I agree. I got to believe the quarterback situation at Notre Dame is probably partly the reason why Cincinnati's favored. Jack Cohn, we don't know, I think, his status. They might go with the Pine kid who came in relief in the Wisconsin game. I don't know, man. Notre Dame and underdog at home. That's interesting. But we're going to be monitoring that game because I do think that impacts UCF. And again, we might know on Monday the kickoff time and the network for the UCF Cincinnati game. And obviously the results from this Saturday will have a big influence on that. And I kind of took a peek at that schedule that day on the 16th. And I'm telling you, if Cincinnati wins this Saturday, they could be in play for College Game Day, and they could be in play for an ABC primetime game or a 3:30 ABC time slot type of deal. If, again, emphasizing if Cincinnati wins against Notre Dame. We'll be monitoring that game. Conference news. We were talking a lot about Navy and their struggles. There are reports out there from multiple college football outlets, college outlets. I think Brett McMurphy was the first to report this There's reports that the American is now on the verge of perhaps getting Air Force and Colorado State. We might know something by next week, according to these reports. There were some reports that they went after Boise State and San Diego State and got rebuffed, but it looks like Colorado State and Air Force might be inclined to make the jump. Your reaction to that news from the American as they look to replace UCF, Houston, and Cincinnati?
Well, there's a few different camps you can look at this, and it's funny. I was discussing it online with people, and apparently now I'm a Mike Oresco burner account.
You mean you're not?
I can't you tell? I look just like him. I sound like him too. Anyway, so one of the camps here is okay. The American is losing 3 of their 4 best teams. They have been knocked down a number of slots as far as getting towards that Power 6 narrative that they wanted. If the teams were still there, they could work their way up to that. But I mean that's been absolutely just shredded. So what do? Take out the competition, knock them down too. And that's what this is. This is about, they wanted Boise State and San Diego State because they were the top 2 teams in that conference. But San Diego State, it would be an island, and Boise State's holding out for the Big 12. So Boise State tried to go the American just a couple years ago and couldn't because they couldn't find anywhere else to land their other sports because it would be in football only. So they tried to get together. It didn't work out, but all signs point to another round of expansion for the Big 12, and Boise State's probably going to be one of those 2 nabbed in. Granted, their other sports need work, but that football program just carries a lot of value. So at that point, go for depth. As and Boise State proved it in the WAC, and they proved it in the Mountain West. One team a conference does not make. You can have a great one team in a conference, but it's not going to. Your conference profile is not going to rise. You're just going to become an outlier to a mediocre conference. So you need to build depth. So take depth out. Colorado State and Air Force, their package pair. Air Force was invited to the American during the original expansion that brought UCF in. They said no out of a loyalty to what they basically the frontier schools of Wyoming, Colorado State, and New Mexico. So the fact that Colorado State's coming with is, I think, part of the package deal. And that also improves the American in the fact that now they have 3 time zones to put product. The American may not make great money compared to the Big 12 or the ACC, but their exposure is fantastic. That was one area in the media deal that they did it right, is they have great exposure. And so now you've got 3 time zones worth of stuff. You have the ability to go American after dark with, a 10 o'clock game in Colorado Springs. It works now. And so if they make the move, okay, you put them in the West. You try and convince Navy to go to the East. They probably don't want to. Because you're going to be working towards 12 teams. They've already said they want 4. So you're going to be looking probably East for the other 2. UAB is probably a lock. And then you have a battle between Marshall, Appalachian State, Coastal Carolina, Louisiana, Florida Atlantic. Take your pick. But no matter what
Army, right? Like they could just Army, get all the academies here and complete the set.
You're right. An Army on a football only, which actually wouldn't be bad for their Olympic sports because you'd still have 11 Olympic sports against 12 football, and that would work. So it's all about destabilizing the other leagues to maintain yourself as the cream of the crop of the G5, which this helps do. Now, it's also perception versus reality. The perception is they're still going to be the cream of the crop of the G5. The reality is their on-field play may not be as good as a Fresno State, as a San Diego State, because the assumption is Boise State and Memphis are probably going to end up in the Big 12, and those are the best 2 teams left out there. So I think this is a good move.
Although there's sometimes this, as you know, this could evolve. I mean, Colorado State has great facilities right now for football. And
fantastic facility.
And they're more on the upside. And I remember they used to be in that conversation for the Big 12, like way back, like 5, 6, 7 years ago about their facilities. They just haven't found the right coach there. But if they get the right coach, I think they can win big in football over there. They've had pretty good basketball there. So I think sometimes we get caught up in the moment and not thinking big picture. So that might be, I actually disagree with people that are critical of those moves. And I could see them going after Army, because if you get Army, Navy, Air Force, the one thing we know is they bring eyeballs. Bring eyeballs. And TV's a part of this stuff. So I would not be surprised if Army ends up being in that mix if they choose to from a football-only standpoint. And I think UAB's, I feel like that's the worst secret in the world. I'd be shocked if it wasn't UAB at this point.
Oh, it'd be a travesty. No other program east of the Mississippi has invested like they have. Birmingham has rallied around UAB. I mean, when that program was unfortunately canned in a really uncool way, the city rallied, and you saw a support that you never saw before. Heck, they have a new stadium now. I mean, the Americans looking for investment. They're looking for schools that are willing to pay money for coaching, are having budgets that are of a certain range. They don't want a project. They want schools that are ready to make the move. UAB has proven to be one of them. Obviously, the Western schools, Colorado State Air Force, have a long history of being able to do it. It's really that fourth school that becomes the big question mark of who it's going to be. And you're right. This is about eyeballs, because there's going to be a renegotiation on that television deal. Cincinnati, UCF, they were both teams that were part of that provision that would kickstart a renegotiation. Well, if you've got an Army, an Air Force, you've got the service academies, and you're going to get those eyeballs, that helps mitigate the damage of losing, better football programs versus programs that bring eyeballs. We love UCF and all, but come on, we don't hold a candle to Army Navy. I mean, it's not even close.
One of the most watched games, one of the most watched games of the year, and it's a standalone game. That's a marquee game.
Oh yeah, and if you have that as an American conference game, an American Athletic Conference game, that is a major profile booster. Now, granted, ESPN won't have control of that. But,
not as of now. But if Army and Navy join the league, that probably in the future they will get that game.
Exactly. They can work it out. They can negotiate. They can make things work.
So we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out on that member. Well, if you're the Mike Oresco burner account, you're not going to like me later on when I criticize the league for some of their curious decision.
And you know what? You're absolutely right to criticize.
We'll discuss.
You're going to go on your rant, and I know I won't be a part of it, but let me say your rant is spot on, and this is a loaded crock of BS. So if I'm an Oresco burner account, I'm doing a terrible job.
Yeah. We'll talk about the conference decision to revoke UCF from hosting the American Conference Championships in softball. What's behind that later on? Plus, big week, big match for women's soccer this week. Bryson Turner will join us later to discuss that. But coming up, we're going to be joined by cross-country assistant coach Bryan Jackson. UCF Cross Country on the map, ranked. They're coming for their home debut. We'll talk to him about what does he think about how does cross country get affected by the move from the American to the Big 12 down the road. All that. And coming up as you're listening to this edition of the Black and Gold Banneret. Before we go, Drew, tell the audience where they can find you.
Well, you can find me at Statboy Drew if you haven't blocked me yet.
And he will be joining me on night shift after the UCF Navy game on our YouTube page. Make sure you subscribe to the Banneret there on the YouTube. Subscribe, like us there. We'll be on right after the Navy game. We'll break it down, what went right, what went wrong, and that much more. Thank you, Drew.
Always a pleasure.
Back after this with more. You're listening to the Black and Gold Banneret podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret podcast. Of course, UCF Cross Country, off to a fantastic start, ranked 13th in the regional rankings, will have their home season debut on Friday, October the 1st at 6:30, as they will be getting set for their season. Of course, they got a young roster of tremendous talent, and in charge of that during the cross country season is the assistant coach Bryan Jackson, who works under head coach Dana Boone. But as I talked to Bryan Jackson, we talked about his role with cross country and the great start this season, including by a phenom freshman who is picking up right where she left off in the spring when she was the freshman of the year in the American. Bryan Jackson, UCF cross country assistant coach, joins us here on the Black and Gold Banneret podcast. Joining us now, he is the assistant coach of the UCF cross country and track team. Of course, he's in charge of when it comes to UCF long distance. Of course, UCF cross country ranked 13th in the South region rankings. First time they've been ranked since September 19th, 2016. They're getting set for their home opener on October the 1st. We're speaking, of course, of assistant coach Bryan Jackson joins us here on the Black and Gold Banneret podcast. Coach, how you doing?
Good. How about yourself?
Doing great. Let's talk about that ranking, 13th. What was the reaction there? It's been a while since 2016. Was there any reaction at all from the program standpoint or the players? What was that like?
Yeah, I think the girls were excited to get some recognition. But I think they have a good perspective on it. Like I told them, we don't get too caught up in the opinion of other coaches, because that's what rankings are. They're just people's really opinions. It's nice to get the recognition, but we got to stay focused on the growth that we need to continue to have throughout this year, and letting the performances on the course speak for themselves.
What's been your thoughts so far? What have you learned about your team so far this year?
I've learned that they're very driven, right? I kind of knew that coming in, but they're a driven group of women who put in a lot of work over the summer, came in prepared and ready for the season, and then are working incredibly hard right now. And I think what we've shown right now is still only the tip of the iceberg of what we're going to be capable of as we prepare for the championships in October and November.
Well, you mentioned your roster is very young. You only have two upperclassmen. They're juniors. They're both juniors. No seniors. Everybody else is freshmen. I mean, what is that like? A young roster, but yet they're performing like they're vets in cases.
Yeah. And some of it's misleading because I call them COVID freshmen. They were a lot of those freshmen were here last year with us, and so they got that benefit of being in the program last year, training. Obviously, the reduced cross country season that we did have in the winter months didn't count against their eligibility. So they're all freshmen eligibility wise again this year. And so it looks like we have a ton of freshmen. We have 8. Then we have 8 true freshmen. But a lot of those young ladies like Allie and Valerie and Kenzie, they had the benefits of being in the program last year, and they're not technically freshmen. But yeah, very young roster, and very excited about the future.
It's a good problem to have. And, of course, you mentioned Valerie Lastra, of course, is the one who's been making headlines. She was the American Conference Freshman of the Year. She just broke another school record in the 4K in their last race. She's broken some records already. Just talk about her and what makes her so unique there. She's off to a tremendous start.
Yeah, Valerie's off to a great start to her career here at UCF. Has set a lot of records, and I think the biggest thing that kind of makes Valerie unique is just her approach she takes, and how hard she's willing to push herself, and how she's just very disciplined in the training and doing all the little things, and obviously a very talented young lady that when you couple her work ethic and attention to detail and the little things all together, it just makes for a special athlete.
When you were recruiting her, when did you kind of notice that she could be this good? Did you know at the time? I mean, what was that like as you were kind of looking at her?
Yeah, I mean, Valerie is a 2-time Foot Locker national qualifier, and in the world of cross country, the top 40 women in the country make that meet. And so that's a pretty prestigious meet to be invited to race at out in San Diego. And she made that meet. She qualified for that meet her junior year and senior year of high school. So it's pretty rare to be able to sign a 2-time Foot Locker finalist, a 2-time high school All-American in cross country. And so I think she wasn't under the radar by any stretch of the imagination. But it was definitely one of those young ladies that a lot of people wanted. And we were just very fortunate that this was the right fit for her, you know?
No doubt. Of course, you've got the veteran on the team, Charlotte Crook, who's been reliable. Talk about her. Is she like one of the leaders on the team?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, you know, she's really developed in that leadership role too, and has come a long way since her freshman year, in her leadership, in her approach to training, and in her approach to competition. You know, I've just been really proud of the growth that she's had over the last, you know, this is her 4th year here. She actually has 1 more year of eligibility after this, but this is her senior year academically. She's just grown a lot into the young woman that she is today, and just really proud of what she's doing, not just from a performance standpoint, but also from kind of a big sister leadership standpoint on the team.
Talk about the rest of the squad. Obviously, Cambry Smith, Alexandra Del Rey had good starts up in Gainesville there, good races. Just talk about the rest of the roster and kind of what you expect here the rest of the way.
Yeah, we have a lot of talented young ladies on the roster. And if I start listing them off and talking about them, I'm going to leave somebody out, right? But all of those young ladies are just training incredibly hard right now. And I think what makes this team get so fun this year is the fact that, like, any week we can have a different top 5 or top 7. There's so much depth on this roster that, you know, it really pushes them all to be better and better week in and week out. And so, you know, Allie's doing a phenomenal job. She's in a great place right now. Cambry Smith, you know, coming out of high school, and she's a true freshman for us, is really kind of, you know, popped onto the scene here and done a really nice job. But then you got Isabel Babylonia, Lillian Holtry, all these true freshmen that we really expect big things from as we finish out this cross country season. And I think, you know, they're in a good place, and it's going to be fun to see how we progress.
I wondered, obviously, Renaya Jones had an incredible track and field year in the NCAA championships. You're trying to qualify for the Olympics. It was just an incredible freshman year. I'm curious if you think her success in that year that she had a few months ago, does that inspire some of your cross-country athletes to say, we could be that, we can kind of break out and make a name for ourselves here in the cross-country level? Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it inspires across the entire track and field team. Every group on the track and field team, I think, has looked at that and like, okay, you know, now who's next? Like, who's going to do that next? Like, and they're all very driven and working incredibly hard. So I can speak specifically for my group and the distance group, but they're definitely a driven bunch. And I think anyone that spends some time with them, anyone who spent some time with them would know that, you know, they're a special group of women who really want big things in not just their athletics, but their academics as well. I think I always want to mention, I always want to give them credit. They were the highest team GPA in the athletic department last year. And so I can't go in an interview without giving them a shout out for that, because I'm very proud of that.
What has it been like? You had to do a track season and cross country season all within this calendar year. It's unusual. Usually, you didn't have it last fall. You had to have it early in 2021. What has that been like? And has that been something that you have to monitor? Has that been have you seen any effects of that? What has it been like?
It was spring 2021 was wild. You know, we had winter cross country. We still had some indoor racing going on during those months. And then we went right into outdoor season. I think you definitely saw some effects on that. Like, I think it definitely affected some of the young ladies coming to the end of outdoor season, where they just probably had too many races on their legs in too tight of a period of time. Especially for the younger ones, the freshmen, I think, but then when you give them some time off in the summer, I don't think we're seeing any more effect on that now. I think we did a really good job of giving them a break after that year, understanding that was a big couple months for them from January to May. And I think now they've gotten recovered and they're in a good place to have a normal year.
Yeah, normal year. D, let's talk about you. Obviously, you are in charge of the distance. Just for those that may not be familiar with that, just explain the dynamics with you. And obviously, because head coach Dana Boone runs the whole program, but you're in charge of the distance in particular in the cross country. Just kind of explain the dynamics.
Yeah, so obviously Coach Boone is the head coach of cross country and track and field, and she's hired me to be one of her assistant coaches. And my role from a coaching standpoint is to coach the cross country team, and then come track season responsible for really everything from the 800 meter race all the way up through 10,000 meters. And so I specifically coach those distance athletes and endurance athletes.
When you're recruiting for a distance athlete, what are some of the things you look for? What are some of the qualities you look for? Obviously, somebody runs it very well, but there's more to that, right?
Yeah, you're looking for, our sport really takes a lot of discipline, attention to detail. It takes a lot of time. It takes patience, but it takes consistency and training. So you're looking for somebody who obviously has the talent to run those distance races, but you're also looking for young ladies that just kind of pursue excellence in all areas of life. I always evaluate their academics because I feel like if they want to be great in one thing, they'll be driven to be great in everything, And so, I look for those young ladies that are great students, and then just great people. We want to be great people. And we talk a lot about this year about, not only how we're going to do things, but also how we're going to treat people and how we're going to treat each other. And the focus of this year is really like the how we're going to compete, how we're going to train, and how we're going to treat each other, and just always being great teammates and great people.
Makes Coach Boone so good and successful there. Obviously, she's had success where she's been, and she's obviously having success right now turning this program around. What is it about her as working for her that makes her as good as she is?
I think from an assistant coach standpoint, it's kind of, I think what really sets her apart is that, she hires people she can trust and she believes in, and then she empowers them to go do their job, and she's not a head coach that micromanages. She really empowers you to kind of do your job, and she gives you your role and go run with it, and she's always there for support. But she's not necessarily someone there that's gonna always be looking over your shoulder, double checking your work kind of thing, and I think from the athlete standpoint, it's the relationships that she builds, starting from the recruiting process on. That there's very few people that I know that can walk into a house on an in-home visit and come out, having already developed the type of relationship she's already developed with those prospects and recruits. And I think that's what gets the girls interested. And then when they get here, I think UCF closes the deal. And then those relationships that she continues to foster with the athletes along the way.
And of course, she came from Texas Tech, which is amusing because now obviously the latest news at UCF, they're going to be moving to the Big 12. Have you asked her about any advice of where we're going to eat when we go to the Big 12? What's been the reaction from cross country? Because obviously a lot of the attention is on like football and the effects on that, but this affects all sports, and I'm fascinated your thoughts on how it affects from a cross country standpoint and track and field for that matter.
Yeah, we haven't really dove into where we're going to eat when we go to Lubbock too much yet. I'm sure she'll have some great places to eat because we always find the great spots to eat, the barbecue spots specifically to eat when we're on the road. So I'm sure she'll guide us in the right direction when we get out to Lubbock. But I think right now we're really focused on this year, and we're still in the American, and we have some championships that we want to win this year. And we want some championships we want to win before we leave this conference. And so I think we're all really excited about the going to the Big 12 and what that has in store. I don't think any of us really know for certain what year we're going to be entering definitively yet. So I think for now we're excited, and we're looking at what our approach is going to be from a recruiting standpoint, but we're really staying in the moment and really want to finish the job we have at hand right now.
Well, especially though, I mean, you're you're currently in a strong league and you're in another strong league. So for you, it's not as big of a jump. I mean, you got SMU, Tulsa, Houston. They're all ranked in the South Central. Everybody knows about Houston. Yeah. What's your thoughts on the league this year? I mean, you mentioned Lakeland this year will be the host for the American Conference Championship. Yeah. What's kind of the outlook as far as this league? This league is tough.
Absolutely, it's tough. It's really top heavy, and it doesn't get And so I think I was talking. It's going to be one of those years that the difference between second and fifth won't be very much, and maybe second and sixth won't be even that much. And it's going to come down to those one or two spots and making sure that if we're going to be that team that comes out on top of those battles, that we're picking up those final points in the last K of the race. We're not the team that's kind of like coming off the race at the end. We're the team kind of moving forward at the end and picking up those extra points. And so, I think it's gonna be very, very close. And you just never know what's gonna happen. But that's what makes the league fun. You could, super competitive up front.
Is that something that you think you're having that experience, as weird as it was in the winter, spring, the cross country season, to have it? Because there was no guarantees it was going to happen. To have that experience and learning from that, is that something you think that will benefit here in the conference once you get to Lakeland? That they know what to expect. If you have one bad day, that could be the difference.
That's the difference. Our sport, cross country and track and field, like our championship is decided on one day. Or track 1 weekend. And so it doesn't matter what you did all season, it matters what you do on that day. And so that experience that like Val and Allie and Mackenzie, those young ladies that were freshmen last year, the fact that they got to race in an American Conference Championship and it didn't count against them. They still have 4 more conference championships they can run in, whatever conference that's going to be, is unprecedented value, right? Most of the time when you redshirt a season, you don't get to go to the conference championship and compete. So you don't get that experience. But they got that experience. It's kind of like free experience we talk about. And so, yeah, it's gonna pay off huge that they're freshmen, but they're freshmen with experience, and so. Yeah.
Does it also change the way you coach, whereas maybe if they're kind of new, they don't have the experience, you have to be more patient with them? Or are you kind of coach them the same way, regardless of how much experience they have?
No, you definitely can kind of, you definitely know how to coach them a little bit better, right? When you've had someone in the program for a year, you really have a good understanding of like when to push them, when to kind of hold back and let them recover, and kind of you have a really good understanding of them as a young lady. Everybody's so different. Every person's different. And so when it's a true freshman, you're just kind of trying to figure them out a little bit early on in the year. But it's definitely easier. Like I know how to push Valerie now. I know how to push Allie. Obviously Charlotte and the other upperclassmen I've coached them for a couple of years. So we got a good understanding of what it takes for those girls to run fast.
You'll be hosting the UCF Invite October the 1st, 6:45 scheduled start time. I know you're preparing for that, and then you've got the FSU pre-nationals and then the conference championships. What do you want to see from your team here in the coming weeks? What are some of the keys here to have continue the success you've started with and even get better?
I think the one key for us is going to be to continue to run with a level of cohesiveness and togetherness. I think that's been really what's helped us so far is, the packs of runners that we're running with. I think sometimes when you get all strung out into a cross country race and you had everybody kind of isolated by themselves in the race, it's easy to struggle if it gets hard, but when you have that teammate next to you, and you're pushing each other and you're chasing down the next girl and you're really moving up through the race together, it really adds an extra level of motivation, kind of race for not just yourself, but for your teammates. The one thing I really want us to see is as we get into bigger and bigger races, the home meet, and we go up to pre-nats up at Florida State, I want to see us not lose that cohesiveness that we're racing with right now.
Well, Coach, we're excited for the great start, 13th ranked in the South Region rankings. We look forward to seeing you coming back, hosting on October the 1st. Thanks for taking the time. I know it's a busy time, but congrats so far on the success, and good luck the rest of the way, and we'll talk soon.
Yep, I appreciate it. Thank you.
And thanks again to Coach Jackson for joining us, and thanks to Megan Herboth for setting that up. Once again, UCF Cross Country home meet season debut at home opener on Friday, October the 1st, 6:30. Check out UCFKnights.com for all the details. Of course, UCF coming off strong performances up in Gainesville on September the 11th, and of course in Boca where the season started. And Valerie Lastra, certainly a big-time star, and it was great to talk to Coach Jackson about their season as well as the Big 12, move to the Big 12. So, very good. All right, when we come back, Bryson Turner will join us. We'll talk about the Olympic sports, a big week for UCF women's soccer. We'll break down on volleyball, and why is the American Conference being petty with this move of they did this past week. We'll break all that down as you're listening to the Black and Gold Banneret podcast. And welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret podcast. Eric Lopez here with you. Now joining me is our good friend Bryson Turner from the Banneret, who's been writing Nightcap on a weekly basis, and of course had a great feature right now you could read on Black and Gold Banneret on Anne-Marie Watson. Bryson, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you to everybody that's read and loved the Anne-Marie Watson article. I appreciate it very much. Me and Eric, because Eric interviewed Anne-Marie for this story. We both planned this out for a while, and we're very excited to see what more Know Your Knights we will be able to bring in the future.
Well, let's actually start with volleyball. We'll start that way. We could talk more about Anne-Marie Watson. For those that haven't had a chance to read, just kind of give us a tease of what they can expect on this feature on Anne-Marie Watson, who's off to a great start this season. Has had a great career at UCF, and a local kid.
Yes, indeed, Eric. So basically, the feature tells the tale of Anne-Marie Watson, of where she came from, how she played in the shadow of UCF's campus, just 5 minutes down the road at Haggerty High School, and how she picked up the volleyball very quickly. She played youth softball up until high school and didn't play volleyball until her freshman year of high school, and how she's grown into what I would honestly call one of the better UCF volleyball players of all time.
So we strongly recommend you to read that article. You'll hear comments from Coach Dagenet, her high school coach at Haggerty, used to be a former UCF assistant, her current UCF teammates. It's a really cool feature on Anne-Marie. And of course, we had her on the podcast on last week. We encourage you to listen to that, and actually you could watch that interview on our YouTube page. Make sure you subscribe and like on our YouTube page there at Black and Gold Banneret. The good news is we're good luck. UCF swept East Carolina and Cincinnati last weekend, 3-0. No surprises there. Quite frankly, those two teams are not very good. And as a result, UCF dropped in the RPI because of that, and they're like 19. This weekend, Bryson, they will be on the road at Wichita State on Friday night, and then at Tulsa. This is usually, from a travel standpoint, one of the more difficult trips to do, because it's not so simple to get to Wichita, Kansas, and then Tulsa, Oklahoma. But Wichita State usually has great tradition in volleyball. Their RPI, I believe, is in the 50s. And this will be a challenge for UCF, because with the way the American is set up right now in volleyball, they can't afford to have slip-ups here because your resume will drop. Now, I think they're in good shape. But if their goal, and they do have a chance to do this, and that is host a regional like they did in 2018, they're going to basically have to come close to running the table in the league to do that. Because if not, if they drop, let's say 3 to 4 matches, their RPI will drop. And that's why these matches are critical. There's not that big room for error like you have in other leagues.
Yes, indeed. By the way, you said Wichita State was in the 50s in the RPI. I have the exact number. It's 56.
There you go.
And to note, the 4 highest ranked American teams in RPI in volleyball: UCF 19, Houston is 48. We just said Wichita State was 56, and SMU is 64. So if you want to watch volleyball, and anyone that we definitely want to pay attention to, it would be Houston, Wichita, and SMU. So yeah, I would say if UCF has any trouble with anybody in the American, then it would be these 3 teams.
And Houston will be coming to UCF on October the 8th. Of course, they play each other twice, home and home there. So we'll have to monitor that, because, again, UCF right now, you want to be usually in the top 16 in that RPI to have a chance to host. And this is a good year for UCF to possibly host. Florida's in the 40s. Florida State is in the 30s. So but it's early in volleyball. And again, I think the Wichita State one, I'm very interested to seeing how that plays out. Tulsa's not very good this year, but Wichita State is. And I think that's a true challenge on the road. This could be like, if I circled the schedule, what are the matches that UCF volleyball could lose? Wichita State would be at the top of the list, right up there. So we'll see. We'll see how that match goes. That's an 8:00 Friday night against Wichita State, then Tulsa Sunday at 2 Eastern there. Now, no UCF team has more pressure, Bryson, than women's soccer, who, while they're off to a very good start overall scheduling-wise, and RPI is very good, they're at 28, they've kind of dug themselves a hole in league play. They're 0-2 in conference play, coming off the loss to Memphis, 2-1. And they get set now to go up at SMU, who is not easier. They have a high RPI as well. This is the next 2 matches here, Bryson, for UCF women's soccer is critical. At SMU, and then they host South Florida. Those are your last 2 opportunities here. To me, it's a must-get results for UCF here in the next 2 matches. If they were to drop these 2 matches, they might be in jeopardy of missing the conference tournament. And if they miss the conference tournament, I don't see the committee putting them in the NCAA, despite even if they have a decent RPI. Their RPI right now is 28. This is a big match at SMU against a very good SMU team.
Oh, yes, definitely. And the thing is that I am not 100% sure that UCF will come out of Dallas with the win, and this is why. Looking back at the Houston and Memphis game, because as a lot of people might have been thinking with how we did in the out-of-conference schedule, I was just wondering what's going on in conference, like what's going on. So I took a look at both games, and I took a look at the American Athletic Stats, and I noticed that Memphis and Houston actually are 2 of the top 3 least goals allowed all season. USF and UCF are both tied for 4th at 10 goals allowed. Memphis is in 2nd at 5th, and Houston is 3rd at 7. And when you look at the Houston and Memphis games, you look what happened. Both games were won by 1 goal, and both Memphis and both Memphis and Houston were able to limit the UCF offense. If you look in both instances, Houston and UCF both had just half of the shots that Memphis and Houston attempted. So either the UCF offense is going to really need to break through these defenses, or the UCF defense needs to be able to limit the amount of times their opponent offense can break through, because Caroline Delisle has been given an absolute workout over the course of these last 2 games.
You're right. They've been constantly playing on their heels in these type big matches at times recently. SMU is ranked in the top 25. They're ranked 14th in the polls. They're ranked 13th in the RPI. This is a monster match for UCF, who's, I mentioned, 28 in the RPI. South Florida is 32 in the RPI. Memphis is 40 in the RPI. And then after this, down the stretch, UCF's not going to have marquee games. So this is a big 2 matches here. If you get some results here, then I think they remain on track to make the NCAA tournament. If they don't, if they drop this match and go 0-3 going into South Florida, they could be in some big trouble. This is a big match against SMU.
By the way, do you know who's ranked 1st for least goals allowed this season?
Go ahead.
SMU.
Very good defensive team, yeah.
And they are coming off of 5 straight shutouts. They have not allowed a goal since September 6th. So I would say that if the last 2 games were tough, this is going to be really tough, which is why I think that if we're thinking realistically, I'm thinking that that USF match is going to end up being that must win, both in terms of rebounding from the 0-3 conference struggle, and because USF is ranked number 32 in RPI, right behind USF. And they're tied in the least goals allowed. So it looks like a very even match game at home. So while I would say it would be great to go to Dallas and defeat SMU, if that ends up not going UCF's way, which it very well might, then that's going to put a lot of pressure on that USF game.
And they need a good result. Their best win is Penn State. Texas, who UCF beat earlier in the year, currently is ranked 70 in the RPI. That's not good enough. The Ole Miss, is pretty good. But we'll see. They got some good wins non-conference. Ole Miss and Penn State right now probably is to lead the way. But can they set it up there where they could get some results conference-wise? They have to get some conference results. You cannot struggle in conference. It reminds me of Donnie Jones, his first year at UCF. They had a great non-conference and struggled into conference play. Didn't make the NCAA tournament as a result of that. And I feel like this could be a dangerous situation similar, but we'll see. Long ways to go. But they did clearly the conference schedule was front-loaded. That didn't help. And we'll see. At SMU, 8 o'clock Thursday night, ESPN Plus, big match against SMU. Now, obviously, men's soccer going on. They got a busy week. Depending when you hear this, they would have played South Florida on Wednesday night in Tampa. Shout out to my good friend Ryan Urquhart. He's calling the match, or called the match, depending when you listen to this. There. On Sunday, men's soccer will host Memphis at 6 o'clock. This is the second meeting in a few weeks that UCF men's soccer would have had with Memphis. They beat Memphis in Memphis to start conference play 4-1. And obviously, USF match without standing. We'll put that to a side, Bryson. Their offense has been clicking here over the last few matches.
Oh, yes, for sure. I mean, with all just in the last match, we really kind of got a who's who of the UCF offense. Gino Vivi was assisted on 2 goals. Alessandro Campoy got his first goal that wasn't in his 4-goal game. Luca Dorado got another goal with an assist from Nick Taylor, who is one of the nation's leaders in that category. And Nick Taylor even got a goal for himself. So how about that? So, yes, I would say that the UCF offense has been its biggest strength. And now that Tyler Levine has come in and managed to get some saves in there, I think that this right now UCF men's soccer is definitely clicking at the right time.
No doubt about it. I agree, and I think we'll see how this will play out this week. Kind of tricky with 2 matches in a short period of time, so we'll see how they handle that. From that standpoint. So that's the story on men's soccer there. Where are some of the other sports and storylines going on in UCF athletics people may not be aware of?
Well, one thing that we didn't mention from volleyball is that Claudia Dillon actually got 6 of the 11 aces in the Cincinnati match, which is the most aces a UCF volleyball player has scored since earlier this year when Tali Marmon had her 8 ace game. But it's the first time that a UCF volleyball player had exactly 6 aces in a single match since Kelly Weaver on September 7th, 2007. So that was a very nice history book moment right there. We also have some news from one of our alumni, Kristen Thomas, who was on the Team USA Rugby Sevens team, is going to be competing in a brand new professional Rugby Sevens league that has been sanctioned by USA Rugby as the highest level of competition in the US for Rugby Sevens. So that league is going to be starting on October 9th with a 1-day tournament. And Kristen Thomas's team has just been revealed. She is on a team that's called the Headliners, and she will be playing at 10:50 a.m., 12:55 p.m., and 2:40 p.m. on October 9th. And you'll be able to follow the tournament the whole day on Fox Sports 2 and wherever you can stream Fox Sports. So I'm very excited for that. While I was sleep deprived, I was also very excited watching Kristen Thomas in the Team USA Rugby Sevens team. So to get a chance to see this new league in action and here in the US and where I can actually watch and not have to stay up until 2 a.m. or something, that certainly is great. Breaking news out of women's tennis. They brought in 2 international players today, Noelle Saidanova from Russia and Sofia Biolay from France. They also just opened their fall season in NC State. Valeria Zaleva was the highlight, going 3-2, and then also the number 8 ranked individual in women's tennis, Natalie Sabash, was upset by our Vagina Levashova. So those are some highlights from there. And then of course, women's golf just finished in the top 5 in their most recent tournament. I believe it is their second of the season. fall season.
Should be very good stuff there. A couple more items here before we sign off, Bryson. Women's basketball. We actually forgot to mention this last week. Shame on us. They announced their non-conference schedule for this upcoming season, sir, and you and I are pretty fired up. UCF will get to host Tennessee, the Lady Vols, November 12th. That's a big deal. That is as marquee as you get. One of the great brands in women's basketball. Props to Coach Abe and company, who have scheduled an absolutely brutal non-conference schedule. They do not duck anybody from their standpoint. They're going to open the season at home against Duquesne on November 9th. The big one Friday, November 12th, Tennessee. Then November 17th, they go to Virginia. Remember, that's a return trip from last year when UCF opened the season against Virginia and blew them out. They host Belmont. Belmont's very good. They've dominated the Ohio Valley. This will be, by the way, the last year for Belmont in the Ohio Valley. They just announced this week they're going to Missouri Valley because everybody's moving in conference play right now. Then they will go to Cancun to play USC and Idaho State. USC, another brand in women's basketball. They will host Arkansas, which is an NCAA tournament team, on December 2nd. They will play at Mercer, at Seton Hall, at Iowa. Iowa has one of the top players in the country. That's a big matchup, December 18th. Iowa was a Sweet 16 team last year in the tournament, and then they're at Princeton. A challenging schedule for Coach Abe there, Bryson, but wow, we're going to get Tennessee's going to be on the court here at UCF.
Oh, yeah, I know. I mean, look, they may not be a team led by Pat Summitt anymore, but if college sport has taught us anything, programs can stay story even when one of the main people that contributed to it left. And I love the fact that we're going to get a great college football program like Tennessee here at UCF. It's
a great college women's basketball program. Them in Connecticut is the standard.
Oh, yes, for sure. And so considering that the UConn left the American and took their women's basketball program with them, it's great that this program is going to be able to schedule people like Tennessee for things like this. However, one thing I do want to mention, obviously Iowa is going to be a tough match, especially on the road. But looking at this, I'm seeing that we're going to be having Mercer going to Mercer on December 12th, going to Seton Hall on December 14th, and then Iowa on December 18th. That means in the span of 1 week, UCF women's basketball is going to be having three away games against non-conference opponents. I would say that is definitely a time of the season to watch for them, because that's going to have to be tough to go to 3 away games in the span of a week, concluding with a Sweet 16 team like Iowa.
Caitlin Clark is the name to keep in mind for Iowa. She's going to be a Player of the Year candidate in women's basketball. She's a stud. I mean, it's her and the UConn kid. They're the top 2 players. Bunchins. She's loaded. She could play. She's going to play the next level in the WNBA. So that's the name to watch. But it's a challenging schedule. Unbelievable for Coach Abe. I mean, props on that. The conference tournament in women's basketball will be in Fort Worth once again. One place that UCF was supposed to host was the American Softball Championships. However, pettiness, Bryson. Pettiness exists in our world, ladies and gentlemen. The American Conference has decided earlier this week to relocate 3 of the conference championships they were going to hold this season here in the spring. And what do you know? What a coincidence. Who was involved in it? UCF hosting the softball championships has now been moved to East Carolina. Track and field, which was supposed to be hosted by Houston, and swimming, which was supposed to be hosted by Houston. All of that has been moved. The track and field has been moved to Wichita State. Now, why would they do that? Well, the conference tweeted out the decision to relocate 3 2022 championships was in accordance with the long-standing conference bylaws that were agreed upon by all members, nothing more. All schools remain eligible to host any championships that are determined by regular season standings. Leroy Burrell, an icon track coach, obviously at Houston and a gold medal, Olympian, tweeted out, I was informed by email that the American Conference ADs and senior women administrators voted to strip the 2022 conference meet from Houston. I can't believe that some, quote, professionals would make such a decision. This only hurts student athletes of the host institution, and it's just petty. I'll go a step further, Leroy. Not only it's petty, it's stupid. So here's my question. Where was the votes on this when UConn, who was kicking and screaming to get out of the league, they didn't strip them of hosting the women's basketball championships at the Mohican Sun? Why was that? Oh, because they didn't want to, they were too afraid of Gino? It's ridiculous. I do think part of this was, I think, flared up because of what Cincinnati and the stunt they pulled a few weeks ago where they had the Big 12 flag, which was, that's not cool. I did not agree with that. Cincinnati putting a Big 12 flag the day after that was announced they were moving to the Big 12 in a couple of years. But here's the stupid thing. Why are you doing this now? There's the UCF in Houston, as far as we know, as of now, is likely going to still be in the American this year and next year. So you're looking at 2 seasons. Now, if you would have made this decision, let's say in the summer, and you would say, you know what, next year, UCF, Houston, Cincinnati, they cannot host any tournaments. Okay, I get it. But to pull this stunt when it's already been decided, and I don't think people realize this from a softball standpoint, usually when the softball host is hosting the tournament, they are on the road the weekend before that. That's usually the kind of the rule in the scheduling. So I will give you this little quiz here, Bryson, and our audience. Without myself getting in trouble, UCF is scheduled to play on the road in softball this year at USF, at Houston, at Wichita State. Let's just say that UCF has the longest trip of those 3 prior to the conference tournament. I'll leave it as that. You can figure it out in your own head. So now they got to go on the road at a lengthy trip, we'll just say, of those 3. I mean, let's just say a car ride does not qualify as a long trip. They got to come back from that trip back to Orlando, and now they got to go to Greenville. They have been put in a significant disadvantage by this. I think this is petty, and it's silly because you're hurting the student athletes. And the thing that bothers me, and Leroy Burrell made the point of this was decided by administrators and ADs, not by coaches, not by players. If coaches in the league would have said, hey, get this out of here and things like that, I would be one thing. But by administrators who are empty suits, who don't play, who don't know what it's like to step on the field in most cases, I think is ridiculous.
Yeah, I would say that I'm not really as mad, I would say, as you. I'm more of the mind that I'm just more, I guess, confused in a way. And let me explain what I mean. So obviously the Americans said that these moves were done according to their bylaws, right? Well, me and I believe and our fellow Banneret colleague Andrew Gluchov tried to look at those bylaws to see which ones that maybe it might be, and we go and look, and we don't really find anything. Like the last conference manual that I think is on the website was, I think, from 2019. So it's like, if you're gonna say it's from the bylaws, then make your bylaws available so at least we can make some guesses on that.
The problem is they can't, because this is basically in a reaction to them leaving in the league. That's all this is, and they don't want to say it. And it's just disappointing because I can tell you, forget softball. Obviously, I'm biased towards softball and all that. Forget the fact that if you look at the best destinations for hosting is Orlando, Tampa, Houston. Nobody really brags about going to Greenville, with all due respect. Track and field. If you ask any track athlete, the number 1 spot is Houston. I've talked to people that know more about track than I do. Houston is one of the top surfaces right now to participate in track and field. Not to mention, obviously, the legacy that program has with Carl Lewis, Leroy Burrell. You're hurting the student athletes. Trust me. If you ask the student athlete, they'd rather be in Houston than Wichita. I'm sorry. And by the way, for all you administrators, if you got the invite to go to the Big 12, you would have jumped too. Petty. Just petty and disappointing. The Americans not the only ones that do this, by the way, in fairness. Any other league does the same stuff. And this is the nonsense that we have right now in college athletics. We have a bunch of petty people running it. So anyway, that's all I'm going to say about it, because I'm going to get more fired up and angry. And I was actually in a good mood until now. So there you go.
Well, hey, do you want me to go ahead and give you a little bit of a teeny dose of good news?
I could use one, yes.
All right, so I forgot to mention this back when men's golf was back when talking about women's golf, but freshman Zoe Allo hit the lowest round of the tournament women's golf participated in this week at the Bryan National Collegiate, I believe it was, and she tied for the lowest 18-hole score in UCF women's golf history. So congratulations to Zoe Allo for that.
Congrats indeed on that. All right, that's going to wrap it up here on this episode. But reminder, we're going to be on night shift following the UCF Navy football game on Saturday on our YouTube page. Subscribe there. Plus, if you subscribe there, look for some interviews here in the next week. I have an interview with two of the UCF Hall of Famers. The Hall of Fame ceremony, Friday, October the 8th, will be coming up this weekend. Next weekend, I should say. Natalie Land, UCF softball, I interviewed her. That'll be up on our YouTube page, as well as Afia Charles will be on our YouTube page. We're going to write articles about those two with some quotes next week on blackandgoldbanneret.com. And then me and Bryson might even do either a special podcast or maybe a night shift edition of the Hall of Fame for UCF. So that'll be some of the content to look for next week as well. And of course, Bryson, you're going to be following all the UCF Olympic sports. You're going to be ready for the nightcap next week. Where they can find you?
You can find me at It's Bryson Turner on Twitter. I'm very excited for everything in store for Nightcap this week, especially with everything going on with women's soccer, with this being a key time for them. And we're going to get the return of Cross Country, who's going to be hosting the UCF Invite on October the 1st. I believe this is also the first time we're going to be seeing Lastra since she broke the 4K record. Right.
Yeah, it's our home opener. We talked to Coach Jackson earlier on the show about that, no doubt. You can also watch that interview, by the way, on our YouTube page. In fact, in more unedited version, where I talked to him about what got him into coaching and how he met cross paths with Dana Boone, who was obviously the head coach at UCF. So look for that on our YouTube page as well as subscribing there. And of course, look for Bryson. He'll be tweeting about some of these matches and obviously writing about it on our site on the Nightcap as well. You can follow us on Twitter at UCF_Banneret. All right, for Drew Gluchov, for Bryson Turner, I'm Eric Lopez. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of the Black and Gold Banneret podcast.